Welcome back to the Chattable podcast, where we learn real English in real life and have fun and be proud.
It's really wonderful to be back here with you today.
Yeah, we've got a great one today. We are shifting gears just a little bit. Usually we look at these massive, broad concepts, trends, culture, the big picture.
Right.
But today we are zooming in. We're putting the language itself right under the microscope. We are looking at the specific lexicon of business success.
Precisely. We are deconstructing how the business world talks about, three essential pillars of success, really.
Yeah.
How we talk about luck, how we talk about standards, and of course, how we talk about the grind.
The good old-fashioned hard work.
Exactly.
And usually our mission is just to understand the news, but this feels a bit more tactical today. What is the goal for the listener here?
The mission today is to analyze three specific high-level English phrases. These are what I like to call power phrases. If you use them correctly, you instantly sound more sophisticated, more authoritative. Whether you're pitching a client, writing an executive summary, or just chatting about the markets at a dinner party, these words carry a lot of weight.
I really like that. It's like unlocking a secret code or getting a badge of entry. And just a quick note, for our regular listeners, usually we call these deep dives, and we are still going deep. But for today, we're just going to call this an episode.
Yeah.
We want to keep things practical, clear, and focused on the utility of the language itself.
Agreed. Let's keep it grounded and actionable for everyone listening.
Okay, so let's unpack this triad of success. We have three phrases. Where do we begin?
Well, we are starting with the dream scenario, the one everyone hopes for, but very few can actually predict. We are starting with sudden, massive money.
Now that is what I like to hear. The first phrase on our list is windfall.
Windfall. W-I-N-D-F-A-L-L.
To set the scene, I want to look at a specific case study from the business news. This sentence was everywhere recently. Here it is. Chevron is going to make windfall profits from doubling oil shipments from Venezuela into its refineries.
It is a classic headline. You see this exact structure whenever the market does something truly unexpected.
It sounds great for Chevron. But before we get into the oil markets and the geopolitics, I need to understand the word itself. Windfall. It sounds, breezy, almost gentle.
It is breezy, literally. To really grasp the nuance of this word, we have to travel back in time. We need to go to medieval England.
Okay, I'm picturing castles, muddy villages, knights on horseback.
And forests, specifically the king's forests. Now, the legal structure of that time was incredibly rigid. If you were a commoner, a peasant living on the edge of the woods, you had almost no rights to the land.
Right.
You couldn't hunt the deer, and importantly, you couldn't touch the trees.
Because the timber belonged to the crown.
Exactly. Cutting down a live tree for firewood or construction was theft. It was a serious crime against the king. But people were cold. They needed fuel to survive the winter.
So what did they do?
Well, there was a very specific loophole in the law. A loophole provided entirely by nature.
I love a good loophole. How did it work?
The law stated that you couldn't take from the tree. You couldn't use an axe. But if a strong wind blew through the forest,
Like a major storm.
right, a gale or a storm, and it knocked down dead branches or blew fruit off the limbs or even toppled a whole tree, that debris was fair game.
So because you didn't cut it, because the wind knocked it down.
It was literally a windfall. It was a gift from nature. You could walk in, pick it up, and take it home. It was free, and it was completely legal.
That is such a vivid image. You're shivering in your cottage, you hear a storm raging outside, and instead of being terrified, you're thinking, great, the wind is doing the work for me. Free firewood tomorrow.
Precisely. And that emotional core, that sense of, I didn't work for this, but I benefit from it, is absolutely central to the modern meaning. It implies something given, not taken.
So how do we bridge the gap from medieval peasants gathering sticks to a multinational corporation like Chevron making billions?
The modern business definition has kept that spirit of unexpected good fortune. In finance, a windfall is a large amount of money that comes to you suddenly and crucially unexpectedly.
That distinction seems vital. It has to be unexpected.
It is the most important part. If you work 80-hour weeks, launch a product, market it perfectly, and sell 1 million units, that is revenue. That is earnings.
But you planned for that. You built that.
Exactly. A windfall is different. It happens due to external circumstances.
Let's apply that to the Chevron example then. Chevron's going to make windfall profits.
Right. Think about Mike Wirth, the CEO of Chevron. He is a very smart man running a massive logistical operation. But in this specific instance regarding Venezuela, did Chevron invent a miraculous new drilling technology? Did they create a new product that the world suddenly craved?
The source material suggests no. It says they doubled shipments because of a shift in Venezuela.
Exactly. The United States government eased sanctions. The geopolitical winds shifted. Suddenly, Chevron had access to cheap Venezuelan crude oil that they couldn't touch 6 months prior.
So the market conditions just changed in their favor.
Yes. The wind blew. They were positioned to catch the fruit. They had the refineries ready. But the profit didn't come from a new internal strategy. It came from an external permission. That is why financial analysts call it a windfall profit.
It almost sounds like, well, not that they didn't deserve it, but that there is an asterisk next to the money. Like, hey, you got lucky.
In a way, yes. It distinguishes luck of the draw profits from operational profits. If you hear an analyst say a company is experiencing a windfall, they're usually warning investors.
Warning them about what?
They're saying, don't expect this to happen again next year. It is a one-time bonus from the universe.
That is a really helpful insight for reading the news. If I see windfall, I should think temporary.
Exactly. Or at least not guaranteed to repeat.
Okay, so that's the boardroom. But what about for us regular people? I don't own an oil refinery. How can the listener use windfall in a sentence without sounding like they're analyzing the energy sector?
It applies perfectly to personal finance. The classic example is a lottery. You buy a ticket, you win. That is a windfall. You didn't earn the win through labor. The numbers just aligned.
Or what about a surprise inheritance?
Yes, perfectly. A distant relative you never met leaves you a sum of money. Unexpected, unearned, sudden windfall.
I have a specific scenario for you. Tell me if this works. Let's say I'm at a garage sale. I'm digging through a box of dusty junk, and I buy a weird-looking painting for $5.
I can see where this is going.
I take it home, I get it appraised, and it turns out, boom, it's an original Picasso, it's worth millions.
That is the ultimate definition of a financial windfall. You made an investment of $5, and the wind of fate blew millions into your pocket.
I really need to go to more garage sales.
You and me both. But the key takeaway here is the lack of labor. You didn't paint the Picasso, you just found it.
I love that. Windfall, free wood from the king's forest, or free money from the market. Okay, let's pivot. We've talked about getting lucky. Now let's talk about being good. Really, really good.
Moving from luck to standards.
This brings us to our second phrase, benchmark.
A very powerful word. You cannot survive in the corporate world without encountering this term.
Here's the example sentence from the sources. Apple's benchmarks for product design and quality are really high. Only a handful of other technology companies can match.
This is a word you will hear constantly in performance reviews, product launches, and industry analysis. We need to hit the benchmark, or we are benchmarking against the competition.
And I assume, like Windfall, this has a physical origin. We aren't actually sitting on a bench, are we?
We are getting closer to it, actually. This term comes from the practical, dirty world of land surveying and construction.
Surveying. Like mapping out land for roads and stuff?
Exactly. Imagine a surveyor in the 18th or 19th century. They have a heavy brass leveling instrument. They need to measure the height of the land to figure out where to build a bridge or a railway.
Right.
But to measure height accurately, you need a 0 point. You need a fixed point to measure everything else against.
A starting point that doesn't move.
Right. So they would find a sturdy, permanent structure, like the stone wall of a church or a massive public building, and they would literally cut a horizontal mark into the stone.
They'd carve a line right into the building.
Yes. And then, to make sure their measuring equipment, the leveling staff, was perfectly steady, they would take an iron bracket and shove it into that cut. This bracket formed a literal bench or shelf.
Oh, I see. The iron bracket was a bench for the equipment.
Exactly. They would rest their leveling tool on this benchmark.
Yeah.
And because that mark was carved into stone, it didn't move. It became the absolute unmoving point of reference for the entire area.
So if you wanted to know how high a hill was...
You measured it relative to that benchmark.
That is fascinating. So a benchmark isn't just a goal or a wish. It's the fixed point of truth.
Precisely. It's the standard against which everything else is compared.
So when we use it in business today, we are saying, this is the rock. This is the standard.
Yes. It implies stability and authority.
Let's go back to the Apple example. Apple's benchmarks for product design. Why use benchmark there instead of just the word standards?
Think about the context. Think about when the iPhone first came out. Before that, what was the standard? What was the benchmark?
Probably the BlackBerry. Plastic keyboards, tiny screens, clunky trackballs.
Exactly. That was the level of the industry. Then Tim Cook and his design team released the iPhone. Suddenly, it's glass, it's multi-touch, it's sleek aluminum. In that moment, they didn't just make a good phone. They carved a new mark in the stone.
They raised the benchmark.
Drastically. They set the benchmark for what a modern smartphone is. From that day forward, every other phone, Samsung, Google, Motorola, was measured against the iPhone.
So if I'm the CEO of Samsung looking at this new iPhone back in 2008,
You are telling your engineers, we need to benchmark our new device against this. You are essentially saying the iPhone is the fixed point. Are our screens as bright? Is our battery as good? Are we higher or lower than that point?
it's interesting because it implies that being good isn't enough. You have to be good relative to the benchmark.
Exactly. In business, you don't exist in a vacuum. You exist in relation to the benchmark. If the benchmark is low, it's easy to look good. If the benchmark is Apple level high, you have to work incredibly hard just to be considered average.
Can we set benchmarks for ourselves? Or is it always an external thing?
No, absolutely. This is critical for management. You can set internal benchmarks. A sales team might say, our benchmark for success is 100 calls a day. That becomes the fixed point.
So if you do 90, you're below the benchmark.
Yeah.
If you do 110, you're exceeding it.
Exactly.
It sounds a lot more professional than just saying goal or target.
It does, and there is a nuance there. Goal is where you want to go. Benchmark is a requirement of quality. It feels more permanent, more rigorous.
I like that distinction. Goal is a wish. Benchmark is the reeler you are measuring with.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've had Windfall, pure luck from the external world. We've had Benchmark, the rigorous standard we are trying to hit. Now, the million-dollar question. How do we actually get there? How do we make the decisions that lead to success? That brings us to our third phrase.
The phrase of the diligent worker. The phrase that separates the amateurs from the pros.
The phrase is pour over.
A classic. And a necessary evil.
Let's hear it in action. The businessman has been poring over the financial data of the glass manufacturer as he's trying to make a big investment in the company.
Before we analyze the meaning, we have to do a quick public service announcement about spelling. This is where 90% of people get it wrong.
Yes, please. Because when I hear pour, guys, I think of pouring a cup of coffee. P-O-U-R, like liquid.
And that is the most common mistake. This phrase has absolutely nothing to do with liquids. It is spelled P-O-R-E.
Like the pores in your skin.
Same spelling, yes. But the etymology is different. It comes from the Middle English word porin.
And what did pourin mean?
It meant to look closely, to look intently, to study something with deep, deep concentration. It implies a fixed gaze.
So it's not just reading. It's something more intense.
Much more. And this is a crucial distinction. You read a novel on the beach. You scan a menu at a restaurant. You skim an email from HR. But you pore over something that requires your absolute, undivided, painful attention.
It sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. It implies effort. It implies that the text is dense, difficult, or boring, and you are trying to extract every single detail from it because the details matter.
The example mentions a businessman and financial data. That sounds like the perfect candidate for pouring over.
And the source material gives us the ultimate example of this, Warren Buffett.
The Oracle of Omaha.
The man is a legend.
Huh.
And do you know what his primary activity is? He doesn't spend his day in meetings. He doesn't spend his day looking at ticker tape.
I assume he spends his day buying companies.
Well, that's the result. But the process, he reads. He is famous for spending something like 80% of his day just sitting and reading. But he isn't reading comic books.
Right.
Imagine Warren Buffett sitting in his office in Omaha. It's quiet, no computer, maybe just a stack of paper. He is looking at acquiring a new business, let's say that glass manufacturer from the example. He isn't guessing. He isn't relying on a gut feeling.
She's looking at the numbers.
He is reading every single page of the annual reports. He is checking the footnotes. He is looking for inconsistencies in the cash flow. He is poring over the documents.
So when a financial journalist writes, but poured over the statements, they're telling us he did the homework.
Exactly. They are telling us he didn't miss a thing. He internalized the data. It implies a level of diligence that most people just don't have.
So usage rule here. Can I pour over a text message from my friend?
I mean, unless your friend sent you a 50-page breakdown of their breakup. Probably not. You don't pour over a text. You don't pour over a stop sign. You typically don't pour over a billboard.
What do we pour over then?
You pour over a contract. You pour over a spreadsheet. You pour over a map if you're lost in the wilderness, and your life depends on finding the trail.
It pairs with the complex things.
Yes. Documents, contracts, legal terms, ancient manuscripts, things where the details really matter, and where missing a detail could be a disaster.
It's funny it connects back to benchmark in a way. If you want to meet a high benchmark like Apple's quality, you probably need to pore over the details of your design. You can't just slap it together.
Absolutely. You cannot hit a high benchmark with a quick glance. Poring over is the process. The benchmark is the standard. And the windfall, well, that's just the cherry on top if you get lucky.
It really paints a complete picture of the business world, doesn't it? You have these three elements constantly at play.
You do. It's a triad of success.
So let's try to synthesize this. What does this all mean for you, the listener? Why do these three words matter together?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, success isn't just one thing. It's a combination of these factors. You have the external environment, that's the windfall. Sometimes the market shifts, supply chains change, and you get a lucky break. You have to be ready to catch it.
Right. But you can't rely on it.
No, you cannot plan a business on a windfall. That's gambling. So then you have the internal standards, the benchmark. You need to know what good looks like. You need a fixed point to measure your quality against, whether that's the iPhone or just the best performer in your office.
And finally,
you have the work, the poring over. You can't control the windfall. You can set the benchmark, but you can't reach it without sitting down, focusing, and poring over the details that everyone else is too lazy to read.
it's the unglamorous part. Poring over data isn't sexy like a windfall is. Nobody makes a movie about a guy reading a spreadsheet for 6 hours.
No, but it's the part you can control. Warren Buffett can't control the stock market, but he can control how much he reads. He can control how much he pores over the data. That is his competitive advantage.
That is a really empowering thought. We're all waiting for a windfall, but are we doing the pouring?
Exactly. Are you putting in the reps?
Before we wrap up, I want to ask you a slightly philosophical question for everyone listening to think about. We talked about luck versus preparation.
Yes.
Do you think a windfall is actually purely luck? Or does it take preparation to even recognize it?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the wind blows the fruit down, but you aren't in the forest, do you get the windfall?
Or if you're in the forest, but you're looking at your phone instead of the trees?
Precisely. Maybe the windfall profits Chevron made required them to have the refineries ready, maintained, staffed, and operational to accept that oil. If they hadn't maintained their benchmarks, they couldn't have accepted the windfall.
And back to our garage sale example.
Yeah.
The person at the sale needed to know enough about art. They needed to have pored over enough art books to actually spot that Picasso.
I think that is very likely true. Luck favors the prepared mind.
I love that. Something for you all to chew on as you go about your week. Are you setting benchmarks? Are you poring over the details? Or are you just waiting for the wind to blow?
Hopefully you are doing a bit of all three.
Thank you so much for breaking this down for us. This was a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Chattable podcast. We will see you next time.